Alright. Received a couple of messages saying, basically. Sorry, someone's messaging me on Skype. But basically, in a nutshell, people have said if I would resend my comments about Brock Lesnar not deserving a title shot. Not deserving a title shot, and if his beating of Randy Couture and Frank Mir proved that he did deserve a title shot. The one problem I have with this assumption that the question wasn't could Brock beat Randy back when he got a title shot. In fact, if you recall, I picked Brock Lesnar to win. That had nothing to do with it. Regardless of the result of that fight, Brock could have knocked out Randy in 5 seconds, or won a unanimous decision, or could have lost to Randy, and my appointment would be the same thing. He did not deserve a title shot. And I'm going to basically go into this. I'm going to talk to people about how ranks work. And, basically ranks are based on, in terms of title shot, the number 2 ranked fighter, if the champion is number 1, if he's not, then it's the number 1 ranked fighter, should get a title shot against the champion. This is what we've been saying for a long time about the middleweight division, that Yushin Okami's beaten everyone they put in front of him except Rich Franklin hasn't gotten a title shot. John Fitch had won, 8 fights in a row against GSP. That was a little more understandable because you had a lot of the established stars and you threw the BJ Penn into the mix, which kept him from a title shot for a while. But basically, let's look at Brock Lesnar really closely. We'll ignore before UFC because we know UFC doesn't really put a lot of stock into what you did before. So Brock comes in, loses to Frank Mir, which is really not a bad thing. I mean, that's certainly not a terrible thing. Mir, of course, later on proved that he really was back, but he was a bit of a down on the luck guy at the time. So it was okay to lose, but it was not, a huge triumph to have done some things to Frank Mir. Then he beat Heath Herring. Now looking at Heath Herring's record, he's beaten 2 fighters in the UFC, and those are Brad Imes and Czech Congo. And I would like to say a retarded Czech Congo that wanted to wrestle with him. And Brad Imes, who I do believe never won in the UFC. I could be mistaken. I believe his record was 0-3, losing to Rashad Evans, Dan Christensen, and Heath Herring. So, we look at this, and you ask yourself, does this equal a title shot? Does beating Heath Herring, who, if we're being incredibly generous to him, he's a top 10 UFC heavyweight. That's being incredibly generous, in my opinion. And if indeed he is, then it is a show of just a lack of talent in the division at the time. So let's look at a comparative fighter here for a moment, and that fighter I'm going to bring up is Jake O'Brien. A good wrestler, an excellent wrestler, but a bit undersized. The heavyweight fights at 205 now, but he beat Heath Herring back when Heath Herring's stock was quite high, actually, just coming to the UFC, and he beat Heath Herring, and he was on a winning streak. He was on a 2-fight in the UFC winning streak, having beaten Christoph Madu and Josh Shockman, which are not great wins by any means, but nonetheless, stick with me. He beats Heath Herring. He gets nothing. He doesn't get a title shot. He gets nothing. A win over Herring, which I think means more at that time than it did when Brock Lesnar beat him. And then Brock Lesnar goes on, fights Randy Couture, and beats him. And of course, fanboys come out of the woodwork saying, he deserves a title shot. No, he doesn't. That would be like Paulo Thiago came to the UFC, beat Josh Koscheck, which was a bigger win than Heath Herring. I want to make that quite clear as well. Gets a title shot against GSP and beats GSP. Fluke, or he, even if he dominates him, let's say he even dominates him. Did Paulo Thiago deserve that title shot? The answer, I'm sure for most people, would be no. And I'm just trying to get this double standard that applies to Brock Lesnar, that Brock beats Heath Herring, a mid-level gatekeeper type fighter, and gets a title shot. It doesn't. This is what people, I think, don't get, is that it doesn't matter what you do with the title shot. I mean, we look at people who've blown title shots and definitely deserve them. Joe Stevenson against BJ Penn got wrecked. But when you look at the division at the time, Joe Stevenson was a number 3 fighter, with BJ Penn being in the top 2, and Sean Sharp being suspended with steroids, being the other top 2. He deserved the title shot. Got his ass whooped, but he deserved it. And I think this comes down to the UFC never having a ranking system in a nutshell that, has confused people to believe that if you beat the champion, you deserve the title shot. Matt Serra is a key example. He did nothing to deserve the title shot. The tough 4 scenario of having a title shot for the winner was a terrible idea, and I think most hardcore fans would agree with me. It was nice to see a second chance for a lot of fighters that we really liked, like the Chris Lytles, the Dean Thomases, Matt Serra even, Patrick O'Tay, and so on, who gave us very exciting fights during their UFC careers, and you really thought deserved a second chance at the UFC, but they didn't deserve a chance at the title. And this is in a nutshell what I want to just put out there. Like I say it repetitively. Brock Lesnar is a beast. Brock Lesnar has the potential to be a top 10 heavyweight if he sticks at the sport for long enough and develops a style that can stop people on a more consistent basis. I mean, people have seen it with the Frank Mir fight. The way he's going to win now is actually going to be quite boring, unless he learns how to really use jits. He still doesn't. People claim he's a blue belt or a purple belt, but he still doesn't. He's still not a man that can use it very well. Basically, I think I've rambled on for a while here on the topic of Brock Lesnar. But in conclusion, I don't see how anyone can validate him having received a title shot, except for Dana White could bring up money, and it's true. A lot of people turned into that pay-per-view card for Randy Brock, but I'm talking from the strict sense of ratings, which is what I talk about when a title shot is given. Was it earned? And the answer is no. But anyways, that's all I have to say, and I will be back with dream predictions maybe tomorrow or Thursday. But peace out.